our first Arise Community Panel. We are super excited today, and we know that God is doing something awesome and great in our city, and it's just so wonderful to see all the lovely faces in the room. And so we're excited on today. We just want to start off saying thank you to Pastor Allen. He's at the back. Thank you, Pastor Allen, for hosting us. This has been a dream for a while, and we thank God in the midst of everything that's going on. We know that God is doing something. He's doing something awesome. And so we just thank you all for coming here just to listen. And we're going to turn it over to Zoe.
So this is being hosted by Arise, and again, we're super excited to see everybody. Thank you again for turning out. This is truly the product of Jesus, just stirring hearts and enacting change. So we're super excited about this unity within the body. And our mic went out.
Yes. So I have a loud mouth anyway. Hello. It's okay, I have a loud mouth.
Is the light on still on the mic?
It's on now. Thank you. Okay, so today we're going to be discussing life, race, and the church. And so we're excited about that. And we're grateful because
We want to be intentional on creating a safe place for people of color to be able to share their story. So we're so grateful that we have this opportunity on today.
Exactly, and in the wake of, just this whole past year that we lived through, we've heard a lot about how Black men should feel or what their reactions should be or probably are, but we haven't heard from Black men. So that's why we're here today.
Yes. So we have some awesome Black men on this panel, and we're excited about them. And in a moment, they're going to introduce themselves, but they have decided to sit down and share with us their thoughts and experiences inside and outside the church, and then what progress looks like in terms of racial reconciliation.
But before we start, I kind of want Lisa to go over what Arise is and what our purpose is within the community and what that might look like.
So, Arise is a non-denominational organization whose sole purpose is to pursue unity within the body, specifically within the church and our community. And we want to make sure we bridge that gap between what we think we understand about people and what people are experiencing. And so we thank God that through intentional conversations, when we set up events, we are having those hard, uncomfortable conversations that help to enlighten us, and they help us to understand each other more. And so right now we're going through a series of books in our book club. One of our books that we read was Woke Church. Then we covered Oneness Embrace, and now we're reading Color of Compromise. And then we're at the last chapter of Color of Compromise. We will be discussing How to Fight Racism by Jamar Tisby.
You're amazing, and I'm so thankful to be on the Arise team. And what I think I love the most about Arise is that we're very intentional about creating these safe spaces in which these conversations can happen. It's not, hey, I'm condemning you, or you're in the wrong. It's, hey, you're my brother, you're my sister, you're hurt, let me listen to you. Let's move forward together.
Yes. So we're excited. Our panel is going to be broken up into 3 parts. The first will be Life as You Know It. The second will be Life Within the Church. And the third will be Progress.
All right, Pastor Dorsey, you want to open us up in prayer?
Is this mic on?
Yeah.
Testing. I have a loud mouth too, so let us pray. God, we thank you for this day. Thank you for the opportunity for us to gather together as your people. God, black and brown and yellow. God, regardless of where we come from, regardless of what our socioeconomic background is, God, you have called us together to be one. And God, we pray that just through this, what is said, that the hearts of your people would be heard. So God, we pray that by way of the Holy Spirit, that it would somehow transform our words into the ear of the hearers, that they hear our heart and not necessarily what we're saying, but hear our hearts. And God, we pray that this would be a upbuilding and upkeeping of your kingdom as we move forward in progress. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Testing.
Okay.
Okay, I'm really gonna have to use my mother voice today. You know how you talk to the kids that loud? Okay, so thank you, Pastor Dorsey, for the prayer. At this time, we're gonna let the men introduce themselves from left to right, and please state your name, a little about yourself and what you do for a living.
Melvin Session, everyone calls me Wolf. I'm the owner of Wolf's Pro Clean. We are a local exterior cleaning company. Been in Bryan College Station since '98. A wife, 4 kids, 2 beautiful granddaughters. One of them belongs to Zoe, and that's pretty much my story.
Howdy, my name is Ryan O'Brien. I'm from Houston, Texas. I played football at A&M, where I was able to be the 12th man, and I was a captain on the team, and now I currently work as a football coach and a teacher at Rudder High School in Bryan.
What's up, y'all? Antonio Mackenzie from Dallas, Texas. That's my beautiful wife, Lisa, at the end. Married with 5 kids. I love long walks on the beach. I serve as the character coach / chaplain for Texas A&M basketball. Nice to meet y'all.
Testing. All right, so I'm one of the black men up here. Lisa was just I'm happy to be here. My name is Anthony Moore. I am a co-owner of my home care agency in town. I've been here since 2004. My wife, Barbara, in the back. 3 kids, Joshua, Justin, and Zoe. I think the one thing that I am just happy to be here is well, first of all, just happy to be here. I think what you're about to hear a very intimate discussion in most cases. You kind of think about these are conversations that we would have in a barbershop. You know what I'm saying? So the fact that you're getting a chance to hear that, I think it is important. Oftentimes we have divisions because we don't hear each other. We don't get a chance to communicate. So I think it is important that we have conversations. These are very difficult conversations, but it's very rare for us to do it in the format that we're doing it. So I guess real quick, graduated from my historical black college, Jackson State University in Mississippi. That's where I met my wife. We moved up to Seattle. I have a master's administration, master's in health service administration. I moved to Dallas to be a hospital administrator. They actually moved me down here, training as a CEO, and my background is health. I've done a number of other programs and health consulting, et cetera, et cetera. So nice to be here.
Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Christian Dorsey, married to my lovely wife, Anita Dorsey, and we have 1 7-year-old, so pray for us. I'm originally from Bryan, College Station area. Spent 5 years in the Army, and then moved back here, went to Sam Houston, moved to Oklahoma, stayed there 7 years, and moved back to the area to start a ministry. We're also pastors of the Gathering Church here off of 2818. And I'm also a bank manager here with Prosperity Bank. And so I'm just glad to be here and thankful to be on the panel.
Well, we're thankful to have you. I'm defective, evidently. We're thankful to have all of you, and we really appreciate your willingness to be vulnerable in this space with us today. I know Wolf, you're forced, but thank you. We did want to reiterate before you move into your first part. Part 1 is life as you know it, so it's coming from their perspectives. That this conversation is not meant to be divisive or offensive. Again, we're not about condemnation. We're for unity within the body. So we want everybody who's listening to listen with open hearts and open minds. We're really excited, and I know that good's going to come out of this. Okay.
Okay, so our first question is, how would you describe current modern day racism? And then what are some of your experiences?
Oh, she going right into it, ain't she? I'm gonna move that question a little bit later. Wow. Again, some of the things that we're going to say are pretty intimate, not to be controversial or anything like that, and hard things to share, to be honest with you. Racism. I think one of the recent experiences that I had, I guess recent, it was when I was the hospital administrator at one of the local major hospitals, only a couple of them, two or three of them, but executive at that time. I had I guess one day I decided to, go shopping in one of the major department stores in town. And, while I was there shopping like everybody else, taking stuff off the shelves and looking at, shopping like anybody else. And when I got to the counter to check out, I had two police officers approach me in front of everybody and pulled me aside and said, "Well, listen, we caught you on tape, and we caught you on tape. We believe that you have, that you've stolen, this. Can we pull you in the back and check your pockets?" And I can remember just sitting there in my mind, like, I know this is not happening to me. I know this is not. I know what this is, racial profiling in my head. But I'm like, it's not happening here in College Station. It's not happening right now. So again, they, brought me back, and my first thought was, show me the tape. Show me where it happened. No, sir, we can't do that. It was, of course, I, didn't have anything and took everything out of my pockets and all of that. Well, so you can, we apologize for that. We thought you had something. It was reported to us that you did have something in your pocket, and they apologized for it and all that. But after I left the store, I'm not gonna lie, I was upset, really, really upset. It happened. First of all, the fact that it happened. Second of all, it happened in front of everybody, so I was kind of embarrassed, when it happened. And so I went home and talked to my wife about that. Just hot. But I looked back and thought about that. It was an incident, to me, it was obvious. Perhaps it could have happened to anybody, but to me, it was plain racial profiling. And it happened here in College Station. So I've had other incidents, before in other cities, et cetera, but this is probably one of the most recent ones that, that just really shook me on that. So.
I think of the word reality. We have a reality that we deal with, and at times it can be hard to define because racism isn't blatant as it would probably be from past years, from the Jim Crow era, and it's hidden. So if I can give you an example, I've been pulled over 2 times out here in College Station. Nothing against the police. I have friends who are police officers. I love the police. So let me take that. I'm not into bashing anybody, but I'm just talking about reality, right? The reality of it. The reality of it is over there by Wings and More. Man, Wings and More brownies are delicious, yo. Is Wings and More sponsoring us? Not yet, right? But we're coming from Missouri, and we got pulled over, and it was rightfully so. I mean, my sticker was out, but I was in Missouri, and I still had to take the sticker on there. And the police officer treated me with respect. "Sir, your sticker is out." Didn't even give me a ticket. So I was like, "Hey, big time, my man. Thank you. I appreciate it." Right? That's reality. He treated me great. And then on another day, I was, I don't know if y'all familiar where McDonald's is at, right by Reed Arena. I was going to Reed Arena. Police officer pulled me over. had a basketball player with me in the passenger side. He called back up, asked me what was I doing. I told him I was going to the arena. Asked for the players, asked for his license as well. Told me that I didn't stop at a crosswalk at the apartment. Then he kept it real. He was like, I'm gonna be honest with you. It looked like he was avoiding me. And I told him, man, I'm just trying to go take this young man to go work out. And you need to call back up for that. So it was straight suspicion, you know. And fortunately, I have a friend who's in the department as well, and I told him about it. And he was like, man, because I didn't know. I was trying to give the police the benefit of the doubt. I was like, maybe it's something I did wrong. He's like, no. It's nothing. You didn't do anything wrong. You just drive me. So the reality of it is, I had 2 instances that one of them I was profiled, and one of them I was treated with respect. And when we think of racism today, for me, my reality is that how do you distinguish both? How do you know when you may get that one instance versus you get that other instance? And how do you handle when your daughter is saying, Dad, my friend said I can't go over their house because of parents don't want black people over their house? That's reality. How do you, in your neighborhood, and we have the Nextdoor app, and somebody says there's somebody looking suspicious, and it's like a 13-year-old young black boy. The reality of it is I have to tell my son, hey Jay, you gotta be careful where you go. That's reality. The reality of it is how do we have enough discernment, and how do we teach our children wisdom? Man, you may get treated this way. And how do I tell the college athlete who's right next to me, this ain't time to talk. Be quiet. Don't say nothing quick. Shut up. Whatever you tell you to do, you say, yes, sir. And then the police makes a comment like, sorry, I better make y'all in practice. Knowing that he called back up because of suspicion. Because I picked him up from an apartment. Think about that. I picked him up from an apartment and was driving to the arena. A father with 5 kids. That's reality. The reality that we have to deal with is that. So trying to wrestle out both sides of those fences is difficult at times. Because we do have, everybody's not on that side. But we do have those experiences, and that's just the reality of it.
The problem that I face a lot of times being a business owner, going into some of these neighborhoods, I'll have the neighbor of the house that I'm going to come out and ask, are you supposed to be here? Right? I have a truck that has my logos on it. I pull a trailer that has all my equipment on it. But yet, you're coming to ask me if I'm supposed to be here. Right? What do you do to that? So now, one of the things that I do is try to make sure that the homeowner is home when I go to do a quote, right? You don't want to think that everyone is judging me by the way that I look, but that's what's happening the majority of the time, right? I have a 13-year-old son that is 5'11", and he weighs probably 200 pounds, 198, something like that. We see him as a kid. I see him as my baby. There are people that see him as a grown man and will treat him as such if he gets out of line, or if they feel like he gets out of line. So, I have to tell my son, look, man, you can't act the way these other kids act. You can't do what other kids do. 3rd grade, his teacher calls my wife, and the teacher is telling my wife that, Trey's a really good kid, but today, we had a problem with him. And my wife was like, what happened? Well, there was another little kid getting picked on, And Trey didn't do anything. He came and told us. I said, well, my wife said, that's what we teach him to do. The teacher wanted Trey to intervene, and she told my wife that because he's so big, he could scare the other kids. That's amazing, you know? I mean, what do you say to him? You know, my 40th birthday, we were leaving Cotton Patch in Bryan. Me, my wife, and 2 of our kids, the 2 youngest. We took MLK to go and take something to the fire department there on William Joe. My wife is in the passenger seat, I'm driving. But there's a car in front of us, and I see the police officer sitting over in the City of Bryan parking lot over there. And he pulls out, gets behind me, and turns his lights on, and I pull over, and he jackknifes his car so that, you know, there's no way a car could hit me when he comes up to my window. He didn't come to my window, he goes to my wife's window, right? And he says to my wife, what are y'all doing in this neighborhood? My wife said, we're just cutting through to go to the fire department. I work with a lady, and her boyfriend works there, so we're taking them some stuff. And he asked us a few more questions and went to his car and came back and went to my wife again and said, ma'am, what are y'all doing in this neighborhood this time of night? My wife told him again. He shines the lights in my kid's face, says, whose kids are these? You know, I mean, what, I just pick up 2 random kids off the road. You know, and so, oh, I forgot to tell y'all that my wife is a white lady, right? So, and this is a young white cop, and I look up in the mirror. We've been on the side of the road for 15 minutes now. He hadn't said not one word to me, and I'm driving. The registration is out. I didn't have a valid insurance, and I was going 10 miles over the speed limit. Didn't get a ticket for anything, but I ended up in handcuffs because this guy said that I had a warrant for my arrest for unpaid child support. Right? I've been on child support for 2 years. And we filed a complaint, and the lady that we talked to, she said that, you know, we really couldn't understand why because I was livid. Once I got out of the car, you know, we got in the car with the police, I got in the car with the police officer, and I told him, I said, man, you were so lucky my kids are here, or things would have went a totally different way. And he said, Mr. Session, I'm glad that didn't happen. And the lady said that she couldn't understand why I was so upset, because he was being so nice to me. I said, no ma'am, not outside that car he wasn't. Come to find out, he didn't have his mic on. Him nor his backup had his mic on. So they talked to me like I was a kid, right? And to this day, we don't know what happened or anything like that.
So for myself, what I would consider what is modern day racism, I would say it's just being partial towards one race over the other. And for black people and black men specifically, I've been able to travel around the entire country in different places, whether it's playing football or traveling. And I've yet to meet a black man who hasn't experienced racism. I've yet to meet a black man who don't have similar stories. I think as a white American, I think it's very challenging to understand or to see that those things are real if you're not experiencing that. I can sit here and tell you, you know, 50 to 100 stories of racism that's happened to me. But I think the biggest thing that I want you guys to understand for is modern day racism is being partial or not giving black men, specifically, the benefit of the doubt. And I think the biggest thing I think these gentlemen and myself is trying to say, and that's very, very, very hurtful to be in situations, whether it's dealing with the police, whether you're in the grocery store, whether or not you're in a bank, and you feel that you're having an encounter with somebody, and it wouldn't be the same if you were seen as not being a threat. And I think as black men specifically, we're constantly being told that we're a threat. And this is not just something we heard on, CNN or a local station, but it's something that we've experienced as little boys, as this gentleman was saying about a 13-year-old. And being in the school system, which I'm currently in, I constantly see that as well, where if it's a black child, they don't necessarily get the benefit of the doubt for their behavior, or for other issues. Is more or less, oh well, they gotta get it together, or what's their problem? And even how you're handled, as this gentleman was saying about a 13-year-old is talked to like he's a grown man and handled in that regard, and not with the compassion that they should be handled with. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying about what modern day racism. No, people aren't walking around spitting on us in our face, or sicking dogs on us. But I would say more so now, it's more psychological, which is even, I think, is worse, because we have a lot of black, and I don't want to specifically talk about males. You have a lot of black males, young black males, who feel inferior based on treatment from society, where they don't necessarily feel that they have the ability to excel in a wide variety of occupations, careers, and those types of things, based on the experiences that you're hearing everybody share. Those things without a strong male father figure, without a strong male presence, somebody to counteract those experiences, is very, very difficult to overcome and think that you are a functional member of society and that you're part of society. And I would say that's another aspect of modern day racism, when you feel isolated from the general society. And that would be white America, where you don't feel like you're a part of, or you have to assimilate into culture. You have to talk a certain way. You have to have certain mannerisms. You have to fit in, if you will, to be accepted. And I feel that's another aspect of modern day racism in our country, is that as a white person, you can gain that acceptance, but you have to flow in that same type of wavelength in order to, gain that acceptance. Can you really be yourself? Can you really share your experiences with, white people, or not just people in general? Because as a black man in America, it's very easy for us to strike up a conversation and bond, no matter if you're in Texas or New York or the West Coast, because we all share a similar experiences of being black and experiencing prejudice, racism. It's a reality. It's not something we should make up.
That's why I made it the first question, because it was so good.
And so I would just kind of piggyback on what everyone has said. It's, I would say being a bank manager, I'll start there. Being one of the only black males that look like me in a leadership position. And so, like Ryan said, it's like, so I feel that when it comes to the way that we deal with black customers as opposed to white customers, if someone black comes into the bank and they, are rude or whatever, then it's like we're all judged by one person. But it seems that when white people do something, you're judged by individual. And so, for instance, if someone comes in and says something, and then no one is looked at, I can't look at someone else white and say, man, did you just see what your counterpart did or whatever the situation is? But I feel that we're all clumped and lumped in one big bag if someone black does something or whatever the situation is. And so when I think about modern day racism, I think about the unwillingness of someone to see me as they see themselves. And if we go back to the Bible, since we're talking about being a black Christian man, Jesus said, treat others as you would have others to treat you. And it goes back to the golden rule. And so if we're dehumanized in everything that goes on, and things that happen in the news and things of that nature, and what I think that is happening is that person of color, they've been dehumanized to the fact that all humanistic qualities have been taken out, to where you just see that person as a savage, you see that person as, oh, he's a criminal, he raped someone 20 years ago, who hadn't done something 20 years ago. And so, thank God social media wasn't around when I was 17, because I probably wouldn't be up here. And so when I think of the encounters that I've had with police officers, and I just want to put this out there, when I call 911, I want a police officer to show up. So for those that are saying, if you do away with it, I want somebody to show up to my house with a badge and a gun, saying, what's going on, sir? So let's just put that out there. And I think too, what we're trying to say is that we share the same like passion. We share the same stories. And if you would just have time to talk with me and hear from me, I promise you, we probably have the same problems with our children. We probably have the same problems with our spouses, with our families. Who doesn't have a drunk in their family? Who doesn't have someone on drugs in their family? But it seems like when it's in my family, it's totally different. And I think someone said it's kind of like, oh my goodness, they just send them to prison. But then when it's someone in your family, they need help. They need intervention. And so we're just asking if you would just look in the mirror and say, you know what? I will treat any person the same way that I would want someone to treat my son or treat my father. And my encounter with the police, I had pulled, matter of fact, I was on the phone with my wife and had pulled in front of my aunt's house. And my aunt had lived in this house for 20 plus years. And I was still on the phone with my wife. My car was still on, my lights were still on. And so I was just talking to my wife before I went into my aunt's house, and all of a sudden I see lights behind me. And I said, oh, the cop got somebody pulled over. And, because I could just see the lights and didn't realize he was behind me. And so I was just like, oh, he's behind me. So my wife is kind of like, okay, let me call your aunt. I'm like, no, because and it wasn't that I was afraid of necessarily. I was like, please don't call anyone in the house to come out, because then it just escalates the situation. And so I'm glad that nobody from my family came outside to even, whatever. And I was just like, oh my goodness. And so the police officer walked up to me, and again, I'm on the phone and everything is on. And again, for us as black men, we're already trained and told to be respectful, to say yes, sir, to say no, sir, and don't make any sudden movements. And we're already telling our youth, hey, when you're stopped by the cops, keep your hands on the steering wheel. But again, how many times is the white man having, or the white woman having conversations with their children about when the cops stop them? When I grew up, when cops would come to our neighborhood, we were afraid. But when you probably grew up, when cops would come to your neighborhood, you was like, yes, the cops are here. So it's a difference in that dynamic, because when they showed up to our neighborhood, it was always to either drag someone out of their house or something of that nature. And so the cop comes and kind of knocks on the window, so I raise it down a little bit to where I could talk with him. And he says, well, what are you doing? You want to be funny, say, I'm living. I'm just here, whatever. And I said, well, I'm here visiting my aunt.
And so he's asking questions, kind of like I felt like I was a little kid having to explain to my mom who took the cookies out the cookie jar. And so I'm just kind of sitting there like, what are you doing? I'm getting ready to go inside my aunt's house. And again, my car is still on, my lights are still on. He said, well, do you know you parked the wrong way? And I said, officer, I said, all due respect, I said, for 20 plus years, I said, we have parked different ways in front of my aunt's house. And I said, yes, sir, I am aware that we should be going with the traffic. I said, but this is what we do. And so he says, well, can I see your license and registration? I said, my license is in the glove compartment. Do you mind if I reach for it? And I said, I don't have any weapons, and so I reached for it. So he, says, I'll be back. And so he comes, and so he's asking me different questions. Well, do you know who lives here? And I said, my aunt. I thought we just had to discuss that. And so then he mentioned a relative of mine, and I was like, well, what does that have to do with anything? But his demeanor, when he came to the car, he was already to me on 90 and ready for me to send him over the edge or whatever the situation is. And here's the thing, as a professional, I get trained in as a manager and also working in banking, I get trained to de-escalate the situation. That even when customers come in and call me all kinds of names, my boss is making sure that I get fully and properly trained to de-escalate the situation. That I will never get in the boat or get down or come up with a customer in reference to them yelling at me, I'm yelling at them. Why? Because then I lose my job. And so for me, he already came to my car already ready for a fight. And I wasn't trying to fight. I'm just at my aunt's talking to my wife. And so he happens to look and he sees my daughter's car seat. He said, you have a child? Yeah. Oh. And so my daughter was at the time going to SOS on Friday nights, and he happened, and this is what I thank God for, that my daughter's badge from SOS just happened to be laying in the back seat. And the cop says, your daughter goes to SOS? I said, well, yeah, we do on Fridays. He said, you know JJ? I said, yes, I do. And then he says, I think I know you. You're Pastor Dorsey. So before I was pastor, I was a criminal. Or I was assumed to be doing something in this neighborhood that I had no business being in. And so then everything changed. He became friendly. Yeah, I go there and sometimes and I'm there, and I've seen him there after that. And and again, but it's just like you already came to my car with the intent, I'm taking somebody to jail, he got warrants or whatever. I've never had a warrant. I've never done drugs. I've never sold drugs. So it's like, but as a black man, we already we come to the fight 50% because it's already been deemed that we're guilty. That we're guilty. And so in another instance, I was stopped in College Station and I made a right turn going to the ATM, and the cop pulled me over. He said, well, do you know, what are you doing? Where are you going? And I said, I'm going to the ATM. And I had a pleasant experience with him. And because he didn't come to my vehicle already assuming that I was this or I was that or I was a thug or whatever the situation is. And again, different perspectives, but it's just like as black men, we're having to deal with that. And it's wonder why we're not schizophrenic. Why we're not crazy. Because I don't know what you're expecting from me. And so I have to act when I'm at my job, and it's funny because if I'm behind the tail line or whatever the situation is, people automatically assume I'm not the manager. And it's funny when somebody come into my job and say, and they're ranting and raving, they say, I will speak to the manager. And the look on their face is, you can possibly. I had someone ask me, well, what are you doing behind the tiller line? I manage the whole building. But it's kind of the fact that as if the audacity of you being a black man and being the manager of a bank. And so as us up here on this panel, again, as we pray, we're praying that you guys hear our hearts. And as we tell stories and as we dialogue, hear our hearts. Look at us as if this was you up here. What would you want someone to do if you needed help? To throw you a life jacket. Thank you. I didn't mean to preach. I'm
Thank you all for being so vulnerable. Those stories are impactful. We touched on this a little bit, but did someone want to share more in depth? What kind of actions do you have to take as a parent to ensure your child's safety? And I think Wolf and Pastor Dorsey covered it a little bit, but I know, did anybody else want to share on that more in depth? Something that you may be teaching your son or daughter that other people are not.
Yeah, she's eyeballing.
Talk to your mom. Big thing for me is wisdom. I try to preach that to my sons, like wisdom. Seek wisdom on everything. Know when to be quiet, know when to talk. Seek after wisdom. Choose your friends wisely. Try to be as wise. And I think that's a difficult part because every situation is so different. There's no 1, 2, 3 step to it. It's not a methodical step. It's just like every situation. And one thing I love about, as far as like this audience, it's a range of diversity. I try to allow our kids, our kids has Asian friends, Caucasian friends, and they're probably outside right now hanging out. And they know a little difference, which is what I love about kids. So if my children can watch the example that they have in front of them, that's the biggest thing I think as well too. I think whatever me and Lisa are doing, that's what they're gonna emulate, right? Wisdom and try to set an example before them on what it looks like. Kids learn differently, so we try to continue to push wisdom, seek wisdom on how to handle these situations.
These white people, then Hispanics, then black people. That is the breakdown of the race in the state of Texas, right? It's more whites, then Latinos, then black people. Take a wild guess at the prison population. Anybody care to guess? Who's number 1 in the prison population? Black. You always hear that when there's an incident with the police, not all cops are bad. Hey, not all black people are bad. The only thing I want you to give me is a chance. I don't want you to give me nothing else. Just a chance. Stop looking and seeing that and automatically assuming that I'm a threat or that I'm an angry black man when my white counterpart uses that same thing, but he's passionate.
Right.
He's passionate. I only tell you that because it was told to me by a supervisor. Wolf, why are you so angry? But this other cat was in your face cussing at you a while ago, and he's a passionate worker, right? I tell you that you call me out my name one more time and things gonna get ugly in here, and I'm angry. Because you talking to me like that. It's hard. It's 2021, and it's still hard to be married to a white woman in these United States of America. We were at Roadhouse, my wife and another couple. We were leaving, and it was 4 older white people sitting in a booth. We walked by, and I was the last one out. Old white guy looks up and just, You shaking your head at me for, partner? You know, me and another white guy, I got 1,000 stories for y'all. me and a white guy with co-workers, right? Riding down the highway in the truck. And one of my favorite questions is to ask a man, what would you do if your daughter came home with a black boyfriend, right? Well, what if they wouldn't do that? I said, man, how do you can't tell who your kid's gonna fall in love with. But we just know they wouldn't do that, Wolf. I said, well, wait, just explain to me how you know. Hey, we raised them better than that, Wolf. And I said, huh? He said, no offense. I said, wait a minute, partner, you just told me that your daughter, my son is not good enough for your daughter simply because of the color of his skin. This happened probably about 10 years ago.
Cool, you got everybody
It's the reality that we live in. You know? I mean, you hear these people say, hey, all you got to do is pull yourself up by the bootstrap. No. I'm trying to pull myself up by my bootstrap, but yet I go into a neighborhood and you ask me if I'm supposed to be there. So what am I supposed to do? All I want you to give me is a chance.
No, y'all done jacked up all my questions.
That was one question.
It's okay. They are doing good, being vulnerable, and I hope we're listening to their heart, because it's not necessarily every word that they say, which is very vital and important, but hear people's heart when they speak. And I want to make sure we stay sensitive to other people's heart. And they may not speak the way that we would say or, share the way that we would, but we always want to be guilty of listening to their heart. And so, we're sorry that you all had to endure those experiences. We're not even sharing our experiences on tonight. We're going to stay focused, and we're going to move to the next question.
Okay, so now we had to jump all the way down to question 8. I'm a little salty about it. But, so what would you like people to walk away from tonight, knowing about Black men? What would you want people to know, to understand for the first time?
Kirk Franklin and Mandiza and another cat have this one particular song, and it simply says, we all bleed the same. What else is it?
Don't do that. We're not done yet. Okay, so that was part 1. And now we're gonna move on into part 2, which is life within the church. And this is really deep, and again, I'm gonna say it again, they're probably gonna say it again. We're not trying to be divisive. We love our Jesus, and we want the body to really come together. That's why we're asking these questions and having these conversations. All right, Mama, question 1.
Okay. So, what is the demographic of your current church, and did diversity or the lack of diversity play a role in your attendance?
Good question. I say my wife and I, we've been involved in a number of our members of a number of churches, non-denominational churches. And the church that we're here, that we are members of, and I gotta tell you, is probably the most diverse church that we've ever been in. And it's just amazing when I, look across the demographics of this particular church, how diverse it is. And that wouldn't be the case unless we had a pastor that believed in diversity. And from my perspective, that's how heaven is. Because if we don't understand that it is that we're all each other's brothers, you know, who is my brother? You are, female or male. I think one of the issues that we have in America is that Sundays is one of the most segregated days of the week, you know? But this particular pastor really believes in diversity, really believes he'll call out racism, even with his own church members. He'll stand at the pulpit and he will say that if you have this perspective on race, that you can get out. Now, this is a white pastor we're talking about here. That's pretty brave. I've never seen anything like that before, and it just makes me as a black man feel good. I feel comfortable in there. Now, the reality that the demographics in this particular church will probably be, I don't know, probably 70, 60 white, and I don't know, 30, 15 Hispanic and black. But, you know, I looked at, whenever he intentionally is doing this, you know, and I think, and when I look back at it and I looked at his life, you know, what I realized is that the reason he's like that is because it turns out two of his best friends are black. They happen to be African Americans. And what I realized is that because of that, he came into this situation, or he came in as a pastor with a different view. He had a worldview. He had a much broader worldview. And it wasn't isolated, it wasn't in a bubble. You get what I'm saying? So I think, you know, what I saw from that, or what I learned from that, is that, you know, not everybody thinks the same way. I think those pastors that reach out, particularly those that have grown up or been, you know, associated with the African American, know their experiences, empathy, I guess you can say. I think that's the type of pastor, that's the type of leader that we need to see on Sundays, and that are brave enough to call it out when they see it.
My wife and I, just for context, my wife, she's a Chinese American. She's from California, so she's a lot different than us Texans. We go to Antioch, which is in Bryan. It's about, I don't want to mischaracterize it, but about 95% white. It's the black population. You're looking at 3 members on the panel right now. Anyway, I personally love Antioch. I know for myself and personally, I try to bring diversity wherever I go. And I feel like God, in his wisdom, made me black for a particular reason. And I try to positively represent African American people wherever I go. So I've, in the past, 7 or 8 years, I've been in either they're a mixed group of people, like we were in San Francisco, it was mixed, a pretty mixed, diverse. I grew up in a predominantly black church, and I'm so thankful that I've had the experiences in different types of churches where it's been predominantly black, where it's been a mixture of people, and it's been predominantly white, because I feel that one thing that we do miss in the body is that we miss perspectives where, I personally believe that Jesus, he speaks to us in our own language, in the way that we interpret, the way that we talk, whereas, my great-grandmother, she talked a certain type of way, lived a type of way, and he spoke to her every single day, right? And which she'd probably be a great person to go up here to talk about her experiences living as an African American woman in the 30s and 40s. But the point I'm trying to make is that we miss what God is doing in our lives when we are segregated in the churches. And I personally try to make a difference by intentionally going places that might not be as diverse, but still has the Spirit of God and is Bible-based and those types of things. I know me and my wife, we fight because we at times have desires to go to a culturally diverse where it is like having, you have the worship team, everybody's a different race, you have different pastors who come up, they're preaching and they're able to give different perspectives, different cultural aspects, which is beautiful. But I also believe just for us personally that we're called to be diverse, and instead of always complaining about the fact that it's not diverse, it's being there and making a change. So.
And I would just say as a pastor, two things is that I grew up in an all black church and then attended most all black churches, and so then starting a church with the intent of being multicultural is hard because people are used to what they're used to and don't want to get out of that mode. But I believe that one of the things that we're intentional about is making sure that even if they're not coming, we're still reaching out and letting those that do visit and those that do come, let them know this is not a black church, this is not a white church, this is not a Hispanic church, this is God's church. And not just say it in word, but also show it in deed. And I think one of the things that we have to see, even as African Americans, even if for those that may visit an all-black church, is we have to see ourselves in leadership. And if I don't see myself on the podium, if I don't see myself as part of the worship, if I don't see myself as part, and I'm not talking about just ushering or something like that, but I'm saying a leader in the church to where that person is leading and they're part of the core team, then you can't expect me to come there and feel free to worship there if you don't really care about my culture. One of the things that I think that we have done is we're made to feel that your blackness should be kind of put on the side burner when it comes to our expression of worship. I grew up Baptist, we're loud. The drums, everybody's loud. You come out there, by the time you're maybe 50, you need a hearing aid. But my thing is that if I'm coming to your church and as you start seeing an influx of a different race or different culture to your church, as a pastor, as a leader, it behooves you to reach out. Hey, what type of things do you guys want to see? Things of that nature. And I think as a good leader, even myself as a manager, I can't just do things my way and say, this is it, this is the way that we've done it, and then expect my team to just go along with it. Yeah, they'll come to work because why they're getting paid, but will they really be a part and feel a part if they don't see themselves in leadership? And I said, so even from the black church and the white church and whatever other church that there may be, if we see ourselves in leadership, then I know, what, that pastor really has a heart to see things change. As opposed to necessarily just getting my body there just to prove that, we're multicultural, but there's nobody in leadership. And I think as we progress, it starts with leadership. I believe as pastors, we have to do that. It's uncomfortable, it's pulling us out of our comfort zone, but we have to reach across racial divides and traditional divides. I don't do this and y'all dance and I don't, who cares? Whatever your expression is, you do that. A quick story, when I went to work on my master's and I was at Oral Roberts and very charismatic, very Pentecostal. And when I got there, they had what they call a gospel choir, and they sung once a month on special occasions. And it was mostly African Americans. And I think my brother brought up about Kirk Franklin. And one December, right before we quit for the break, they let the gospel choir sing. And you should have saw all of our black faces like, oh my goodness, yes, Lord, thank you, Jesus. We're going to sing something other than at the time Hillsong, and nothing wrong with Hillsong. But I'm saying, feed the whole house,
you know. And so you can work that out. And so the gospel choir got up and started singing Kirk Franklin's "Now Behold the Lamb." And every black person in the auditorium was standing up, "Thank you, Jesus." And meanwhile, maybe a few whites stood up because they probably had black friends that had gone to a black church. But the majority of the whites were sitting there looking at us like, "Who is this? And what song is this?" And in our minds, we're thinking, "You don't know Kirk Franklin?" Well, it's the same way as you're asking me, well, who is Lauren Daigle, or who is, you know, whoever it's and not that I don't know Lauren Daigle, but I'm just saying it's like we're made to know your artist and and the people who you listen to. But I guarantee if I start writing off names, you'd probably be like, yeah, unless they're on Elevation, you probably would know them. Elevation worship, I love Elevation. But I'm just saying, it was the one time during chapel that we felt connected. And I think most of our churches were missing that connection with all of our parishioners, with all of our congregation, and not just African Americans.
I'll make sure to say briefly, okay? Very often. I'll make sure to be. So my next question was, why do you think the body is so segregated? We kind of talked about that already, but do you think the body will continue to be segregated because the black church has kind of become a safe space? I'm proud of it, I know. So, like the response, do you feel like the weight of attending a white church weighs on people so much that when you return to like the black church, it's like a safe space where you can be yourself, you can be expressive, you can worship Jesus the way you do?
Does that mean you got a long going up? Yeah, that's a great question. Being that we're part of that, I think Ron said 95%, I'm gonna say it's probably 98%. 2% black. Yeah, something like that. It's small. I think when you have that, you get so tired of assimilating and tired of feeling like you're an outcast. It's better to just say, you know what? You ain't willing to fight to be uncomfortable. It's better for me just to go over here. Which is crazy because my friends in the world, they're like, black folks and white folks don't need to integrate. They need to just keep it separate, keep it segregated. And then when you get together in spaces and you experience certain things, you're like, you know what? At times, it does make you want to have that exodus. Because I believe I was telling my brothers that it's 40%. It's 40% people that are comfortable being in their circle. So there's 40% who want to be around all white, 40% who wants to be all black. Then there's that 20%, which is probably everybody in this room right now, right? That wants to integrate with both sides. And it's like, how do you find that mix where you can be comfortable and be like, you know what, you're different brother, you're different from me, but I love you for who you are. Which is the gospel, right? Right, so like for us to love one another, yes, that's what we're looking for, that I don't judge you for who you are and you don't judge me for who I am. And that's what we're looking for. And I think at times when you continue to put yourself in those situations, you do want to say, you know what, it's more safer just to be around people who are not going to judge me for who I am. The way I speak, I don't use your language. Like my brother said, cat. And if y'all don't know, cat means brother or sister, all right? So if somebody say cat, that means, hey, what's up, you my man, all right? So like, you're not getting judged for your language, or you're getting judged because you don't fit the style that what that culture may say. Then you feel like, man, I'm being judged for this, I can't be who I am. And it's uncomfortable, it's very uncomfortable if you can't be who you are. Because then you feel like I have to fit your mold, and nobody wants to be that. I think it's both ways. If you come to an all black circle, and we say, hey man, you need to be like us, you're gonna be like, nah, I want to be who I am. And I think it works both sides. I think within the church, we are experiencing that. We've been in both sides, which I love about my wife. Let me get this plug in right quick. I love you, babe. Is that in Dallas, we was in the all black circle, right? Her dad's a pastor. Lisa was like, Dad, if you want to have diversity, you are going to have to change. This is Lisa talking to her dad who's a pastor. So she's not just this way, she's always been this way. She's like, Dad, if you want change within your church, you gotta have change. You gotta bring change. It starts with you as leader. And I think both ways, you have to be uncomfortable, right? Because we do things culturally that you may not do. And we gotta say, you know what, I love the difference in them, which is what makes it beauty. It's the beauty of that. They're like, yeah, God created this culture differently, and it's beautiful just like my culture is beautiful. So, amen.
So a funny story in that, me and my wife moved to Tulsa, and growing up Baptist, we didn't run to the altar during worship. And so, you know, you stayed in your seat, and the choir son or something of that nature moved to Tulsa, was attending a large church there, just kind of visiting. Well, they would run to the altar, and so we was like, well, you know, they didn't open the altar yet, what are we doing? And so we had a few friends of ours, and one of them happened to be a black guy, and we went to an all-black church, and he ran to the altar, and they tried to stop him. And so they were literally like, the bouncer was ready to be like, sir. And so me and my wife would look like, hey, you can't do that here, you know. And so culturally, there's differences, and that's fine. But it's like, he brought us out of our comfort zone to where it was like, you know what, even though we may not be used to it, but if this is his expression of worship in reference to you coming to the altar, then oh well. And so now most churches do it. You know, they have people running to the altar. But again, me growing up Baptist, I was like, what is he doing? You don't go to the altar until the pastor opens the altar, you know, or they set out those 2 chairs and you know, make you face the audience, and it's like, tell us something. But anyway, and so I think that we have to look at each other and say, even though I don't do that, I can't call it unholy. And what did God tell Peter? Peter, don't call what I have made clean unclean. And I think for so long we've looked at each other's diversity and looked at each other and say, we don't do that here, you know, but what if God is trying to get you out of your comfort zone? So he sends someone your way that maybe worship loud, or maybe worship in a different way that you're not accustomed to. And that's what happened with me and my wife with this particular guy. I was like, he is just over the top. Like, sir, sit down. But it just really brought us out of our comfort zone in our expression for God. And everybody is not going to be the same. And guess what? That's okay. And that's okay. And I think if we just embrace one another's diversity, then I think that's where we start. That on Sunday morning, even if you have someone that comes in and they may be loud and boisterous, meanwhile the church is just kind of quiet. Okay, God bless you. We don't know, the woman with the alabaster box, we don't know how many demons that she's been delivered from. I don't know his story. You don't know my story. And so if I'm praising God in a way that's uncomfortable for you, then move or join with me. Then move or join with me. And so, did I answer your question?
This conversation is good. Okay. I just want to put out a disclaimer. Hopefully Pastor Tyler is watching. We love you. We love Indiana. He knows this. Like, I don't care if I'm part of 2%, 1% blacks in the church. I love my pastor. So we just want to make sure we put that out there. Don't y'all spread no bad word on the street that we don't like our church. We got to go back next Sunday. Okay. So our next question is, do you think the church is ready to make progress towards racial reconciliation? Why or why not?
So Zoe wants us to be brief. Did you heard that? You heard that right.
Please share your heart. You're welcome to talk as much as you need to.
Okay, so I tend to get right to the point, you know, how I am. You were talking about Exodus, really, out of the church. And I'm not going to get into, we're staying away from this topic. intentionally. But I will say there's been an environment here lately over the last couple of years where there's a certain people that haven't felt comfortable because of the environment. And because of that, there has been an exodus to where they feel comfortable. And again, it's a shame because it's not where God wants, but it is a reality. You know, I'll just get straight to it. I'm not going into all of that because we're trying to stay away from certain things. But yes, there's a reality that there's certain people that felt that in the current environment that's been translated into the church itself, that I'm not going to say that not welcome, but it's been a divide. That's just all to it. It's sad that it's happened, but there's been a huge divide when that has happened. The reality is there is an exodus, and we're seeing it. And I'm not going to go any further than that, okay? But it is a reality.
I've allowed just what he's speaking about to keep me out of the church for the past year, I guess, right? Because I have a problem with the way you stand at the door and welcome me and my family, right? But then you get on Facebook, Twitter, whatever else, and nothing but the devil. You know what I mean? We gotta do better. We gotta do better.
And what I would say is, I truly believe that the Holy Spirit is like moving through our like Americans, like His believers, you know, to seek diversity. I think we've moved further than we ever had in terms of trying your best to try to understand, trying to, you know, come up with more diverse staffs, and I believe we're further along than we ever been in terms of that aspect. But I do think that most people want to be around other people that make them feel comfortable and satisfy their preferences. And just like my brother was saying about different issues that come up, if you don't agree or having sensitivity to another viewpoint, it's going to be hard to draw people into the kingdom. So that would be my takeaway.
Yeah, I would say yes and no. I think yes. There are some people who it's going to start like a movement, like a non-denominational diversity movement, where people are going to be like, I want to sit up under leadership. Where I know it's like a church in Memphis where there's a black pastor and a white pastor that's working together. I think something like that has to be intentional. Alan, I'm sorry, Alan. In the whole church. No, I'm just joking. But yeah, I think it has to be intentional. It's gonna take something like that where it has to be where, no, I don't want to just see you in the audience, but I want to work with you. I want to look at something one way and you look at it completely opposite, and be able to fall out with you and be like, still my brother. We don't see eye to eye on this, but you still my brother and I still love you. Or you still my sister, I still love you. You don't see eye to eye on this, I still love you. I think when we have that, there's going to be an influx, if that's the right word, of people that's going to come together, like we see in this room once again, and they're going to be able to dwell together, and it's going to be uncomfortable at times. But I think it's going to create a kind of like a movement where that 40% is still going to be over there, and that 40% is going to be over there. but then it's gonna have a body that's gonna be refreshed. There's gonna be a bunch of people that's gonna be like, I don't wanna be around people who look like me. Just people who look like me. I wanna be around a complete diversity of body. And I think that's happening. I think it's gonna happen. I think it's gonna increase more, where pastors are gonna get more uncomfortable of saying, you know what, I'm gonna be intentional on finding somebody who thinks completely opposite of the way that I think. Not naturally body, not essentials, you know what I'm saying? It's gonna be essentials you gotta agree on. But the unessentials, you know, they may worship differently. And they're gonna make themselves uncomfortable. I think it's gonna create a movement today.
And I would just echo, and definitely just say as pastors, we have to get out of ourselves and swallow our pride, to say that, you know, what I've been doing is working, and what how dare we bring someone else in. And I believe that it's going to take, if we lead out by example, then the parishioners will either get with us or they will leave. And those that are getting with us, I think they're ready for change. With all of you being here, your demonstration of I'm ready for change. I'm ready for something else to happen than what I've been used to. And again, I think it's going back to holding our pastors accountable, including myself. Hey, Pastor, you know, I know you said that you wanted multicultural church. What have you done to, you know, what are you doing to do that? Well, hey, you know, and again, you know, and I just think of if there's a few pastors that don't look like me that I have that we have become brothers, and we don't know. What if God is trying to bring us together to where our congregations, our churches are coming together to where it's no, oh well, that's my pastor, that's my, no, these are our leaders, and we don't know what God is trying to do, because if Jesus be the head of the church, then I'm just another member. I'm just a part of the body. And I think as we progress, I see that now pastors are willing to get behind the pulpit and say racism is wrong. Back 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was silence, and nobody talked about it. Hopefully it'll go away. We'll bury our head in the sand. And I think now God has presented it in a way that we have to talk and have to discuss. And as my brother said, let's agree to disagree. There's many different administrations, but just because your administration may be this way and mine may be this way, it doesn't mean that I'm wrong and you're right, or vice versa. But it's just different. And I think if we just understand that we're just different, and that's okay. God made us all different. And I shouldn't be trying to scrub off my blackness, and you shouldn't be trying to put on blackness. Be you, and let me be me. And I think as we progress, especially dealing with race, if the church don't lead out, we can't wait for the world to do it. Because if the world does it, it's not going to be kingdom. But if we as kingdom-minded people and kingdom citizens, if we lead out on it, then the world has to look at us as the example, and not the other way around. And I think what's been happening is the church has been following the way of the world, and I believe God has allowed things to happen to where now the world has to look to the church and say, what do we do? And we have to be ready to lead out. Amen.
I want to say one thing too. Just want to insert this. Don't go weary in well doing, because that fight is not for everybody. Like, one's called to the Gentiles, one called to the Jews. This fight is not for everybody. Some people are not going to want to hear this and talk about this. Don't go weary in it. Because just because God has called you to it doesn't mean He's called you never to it. So if God has called you to it, you fight that fight. And you encourage those who's called to the Gentiles. So yes, just be, don't go weary in well doing. Continue to fight. We thank y'all so much for your support and everything.
All right, I'm not as angry. So what response would you like to see from the church after a tragedy, a murder, something obviously traumatic to the Black community happens? What response would you like to see?
Well, I can talk.
I get paid to talk. So, I would say empathy. I know that there seems to be, especially in the body of Christ, that we're expecting our white counterparts to, we don't have to have another foot washing. We don't have to have another service where you apologize. We don't have to have another one of those. Just empathy. That could have been my father or my brother. And I think that's what we're looking for. I think my brother Wolf said, I don't want nothing from you. I don't. But just empathy. Just, I see you. I see you. And not only do I see you, but I feel you. Because it's not enough for you to see me struggle, but do you really feel me? And can you get in the, when I was in the military, can you get in the foxhole with me? And not look at me that, and well, he was this and he was on that. But if that was your father, if that was your uncle, wouldn't you want the same dignity and respect shown to that person as we're asking? And I think as black men, we're just saying, see us. We're fighting the same fight you're fighting. We really are. We're in the military, they have a term, we're putting on our pants one leg at a time, just like everybody else is. And so see me as you see yourself. And if you wouldn't do that to you, then don't do it to me. You don't have to walk around the store watching to see what I'm gonna do. I ain't here to steal. I'm just saying, but we feel that that's what's happening. And so can we just move past, again, I don't want anybody else to say, I'm sorry, or let's have a foot washing, or let's do this. Let's just move forward in empathy for one another and just say, you know what, Christian, I feel you. And that wasn't right. And I think as we are training and leading our children, you know, and we've been talking about pastors and leaders, but I think also as the everyday person has the obligation as well, in your homes, behind closed doors. What are we training and teaching our children? Because that's where it starts. If we're training, even as black men, if we're training and teaching our children that cops are bad, guess what? They're gonna grow up thinking that all cops are bad. And if you're training your children to say, yeah, black people are good to be around, but don't bring them home, then that's what they're going to think and believe. And so I think, again, empathy for one another to say, you know what I just saw, what I just witnessed, I wouldn't want that on my worst enemy.
And if I can add, I would say sensitivity to issues that happen. I know I've been hurt by seeing, former teammates or church members who are body, Christ followers, and, they'll smile in my face, but if there's some sort of issue that happens around the world, it's just a hardness to the fact that this can really hurt you. This can be very hurtful to you, and not, being compassionate in that. And another thing, just for my white brothers and sisters, is that you can literally say the right name, but not say it in the right timing. I'm like a teammate of mine. He's a Christ follower, loves Jesus, and he would, after another incident of protest, black man getting killed by a police officer, he posts that, I just want to say that I love all police officers and, everything they do, and, I support you guys. If you ever want to come over, I'll feed you and be like Jesus towards you. And that is right in itself. Police officers have a tough job, and they should be celebrated and honored. but it's not the right timing right now. That's not righteous to do that, because there's people who are hurting based on the actions of a police officer. And so that's what I would say is sensitivity to the fact that I'm married, and you might say the right thing, but you just said it at the wrong time. You just said the right time. You gotta sit there with your brother and sister. Sit there, feel that. And I promise you'll learn something. You'll learn something. A lot of times we're grieving, not because we are grieved with what this black man did. I would have been doing the same thing. I would have been on this and that, or whatever the case may be. But we're grieving because we know, without a shadow of a doubt, that it could be us, or it could be a loved one, or it could be a brother, it could be a son. And that's a big thing.
Yeah, I think, and I think Luke 10, when the expert of the law talked to Jesus about what's the greatest command, and then love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength. And then he said, love your neighbor, right? And then the expert of the law tried to be funny, like, who is that neighbor? And then they told the story of the Good Samaritan, right? And how the Levite saw the man who was hurting, and he crossed the street, and the priest saw him when he crossed the street, and when the Samaritan saw him, the first thing he did, he didn't help him. The first thing he did is have compassion. I think compassion with empathy. You have empathy, you have compassion, then I think the fruit behind that, you will bear the fruit. You open doors to your church and allow people to come in and have a panel. That's compassion. I think once we have compassion, I think that's whatever your gifts are, whatever you can do, God will show you what to do with it. But if you have compassion, then you can help heal the situation. And sometimes the Holy Spirit may say, don't say nothing, just give him a hug. Sometimes the Holy Spirit may say, go pray for him. Don't even tell him you're praying for him. And the crazy part behind it is you can feel it when somebody is genuine. You know when somebody is genuine versus somebody is like, just talking, right? So I think if you be genuine and authentic, then, and that's for us too, we have to do it too. We have to be genuine and authentic and led by the Spirit. But in that story, I love that story because before he helped heal his wounds, he didn't judge him, man. He didn't even know how he got hurt. The Samaritan didn't say, hey man, what you doing? Did you do something wrong? Because you get beat up? No, he had compassion because he saw somebody hurting. So what's going on today, you may not understand. And I can't tell you why I cried. But when I saw George Floyd on the ground, I was on the couch by myself and I cried. I never done that before. I was hurting. That wasn't forced. TV, I didn't go to Facebook and say that. But I sit there and I grieved. And then my brother comes to me and say, man, it ain't that dude, you know he did drugs? Oh, is that compassion? Have compassion. If you have compassion, I believe there will be fruits that goes behind that. So I think that within that story, the first thing he did is the Samaritan saw the man and he had compassion. Then he took him to the hotel and said, whatever's wrong with him, I'm gonna pay for it. So have compassion. You may not understand it, but have compassion.
I like that. That was good. Acknowledgement of pain and compassion. That's really good. Okay, question 7. How has the intersection of racism and Christianity affected your walk with God?
It's kept me from going to church. Plain and simple. Just like you don't even want to go to the church anymore. Like I said, you stand at the door and welcome me and my family, but then you get on Facebook and post these outrageous things, say outrageous things. There's no way you worship the same God. you know, with some of the things that people say and post. So that's what it's done for me.
Question again?
Give me a question.
Yes, how has the intersection of racism and Christianity affected your walk with God?
That's a very good question. I guess I'm gonna go back to when the incident happened, George Floyd. That was a very painful thing to watch because as blacks, the first thing we saw was our children. I saw my son too, and that was a hard thing to wrap my head around because it was so obvious, and there was an accumulation, Then it wasn't just that; the fact that it was incident over incident over incident. And the one thing that got me when that incident happened, I was irate, and I wrote a Facebook post, and I started it off with the fact that I wanted to say my son, his girlfriend, she's white, and I asked the question right then. Why should I be concerned about my son? Is her life any less valuable to my son's? And in that post, I went on to talk about the heart of me was that what really got me was that Christian people, us, we were silent. And I'll be honest with you, that's the one thing I heard the most. I wrote all of that for the fact that I saw a lot of Christians that were silent when it came to that issue. For me, that hurt me the most. And so it wasn't, the incident happened. What I didn't see enough Christians standing up, white Christians. You know what I'm saying? Standing up and saying, this is wrong. And again, we were still in that environment. I guess I couldn't expect it, but I wanted to call out, call this out. Let's just all to it. Shortly after I wrote that post, I did have a lot of friends, Christian friends, reach out to me and wanted to sit down to understand my perspective. And boy, that was a hard thing to do. But at the same time, as a Christian man, I said, I got to do it, just like I'm doing it right now. I need to sit down and take the time and have them understand the perspective. And that's a hard thing to do because you're looking at the law enforcement and it happened with that, but it's much broader than just that. It's much broader than what happened that day with law enforcement. And I sat down, kind of like what we're doing right here, like just talking about history. Much broader than, again, law enforcement. And, by the time we were done with it, it seemed like it was 3 hours. And we kind of going back what I want to see. I wanted to see them, and I wanted to hear that they learned something that they didn't know. That's the only reason I spent that much time with them, just like I'm spending right here. I want, what I want to hear, when you leave here, when you leave here, what are you going to do with what you learned today? Are you going to go back to your spaces, and when you hear, things that are being said that were wrong, when you go back to that cookout with family, and when you hear these things, racial things that are wrong, what are you going to do? Are you going to sit there silently and let them keep talking this? Or are you going to stand up and say, no, that's wrong? I didn't understand it, Uncle James, before, but I understand it now. And the way you're thinking right now is wrong. That's what I want to know. I don't want to waste time up here. I'm just being honest with you. I don't want to waste time up here and not be productive. I guess like a return on investment. I want to know. I really want to know that when you go back to your church or you go back to your job or you go back to wherever it is you go to, that there's a change in your perspective, that there's a change in the way you think about this, and that you're able to sit down and you're talking with, you're having these conversations that are valuable, that are changing your perspective. Because that's why we're talking. We're building trust and understanding each other. So that's what I want to see.
And so just to piggyback, and I would just say, and I'll be vulnerable, as a pastor, I grapple and struggle with what I should post and what I shouldn't. Because I understand that, again, it's not just the blacks that are looking at the post, but it's whoever. And so again, I would say my change, I did the same thing with George Floyd. I just cried and I said, God, what do you do? And it wasn't that, and so I'm, in my mind, like Sunday, I have to get up before the congregation and I have to have something to say and not hate, because that's what the enemy wants me to do, and say we hate every white person or down with whoever, or we hate the cops. But really I had to go internal within myself to say, okay, God, and again, not super spiritualizing, but God, you gave your only begotten Son, and you watched people beat him, that he would save. And so, God, if you can do it, give me the strength to be able to, yes, it's strong, but not be divisive. And I think, if anything, that we should caution ourselves, quit getting on Facebook when you're angry, when you're upset, because the only thing that's going to come out is that anger. And you know what Facebook has a way of doing? 5 years from now, bringing that same thing up when you done passed it, and you don't pass it seriously. And that's what scares me about posting things when I'm angry, when I don't understand. But what I've done is I go to the rock that's higher than I. And I'm trying to say this without crying, but because as a pastor, as a black man, not only am I obligated to my community, but I'm also obligated to yours. And if I don't bring healing, who then will bring it? If I stand up on a Sunday and say, every white person is the devil and the cops or whatever, then I'm inciting a riot. But I have to pull back my emotions and say, okay, God, we're gonna get through this. And I think that's a hard place. And I'll just be honest, as a pastor, sometimes I'll be like, okay, I'm done, I don't want to be a pastor. Because especially with, it seems like every week that this is happening. And it's like we have to go back to the same people that we spoke to last week and said, oh, it's getting better. And then it's like, well, Pastor, what happened this week? And even with the mass shootings, it's like, God, how do you make sense of this? And I think one thing that separates us from the word is our faith. And I have to believe that God knows and sees all, and that God would repay. He said, vengeance is mine. And I have to believe that God would vindicate us, and that God would see that right be done. And so I can't go out and now, because then I'm worse than the person posting, if I too have hate, if I too have anger, and I start lashing out. So I'm no better than the police officers, I'm no better than whoever, because I've allowed my emotions to be the best of me. And I think we really have to be careful again about what we put out there in social media land, because it could really bring division in a place where we're trying to bring healing. And so if I could just encourage everybody, if you're angry or don't understand something, don't post. If you don't know what else to do, put those praying hands up. Just say praying for you. Doing the whole George Floyd thing, one person at my job came to me and said, Christian, how are you doing? And again, going back to sensitivity, I work with 14 other people, and nobody said nothing. Nobody and even if they didn't know what to say, just say, Christian, I'm with you. And I think that's that's all we want to hear. We can just sit in the room together and cry. Because you're not going to fix it, I'm not going to fix it. But together we can put an impact and put it in the kingdom, in Satan's kingdom of what he's trying to do. And this is just another one of his tactics to bring division. And if we don't understand that and see that, we'll get lost in the translation. But I think that we have to understand that in order to move forward, we've got to get out of our emotions about it and say, okay, I'm not going to lash out, because yes, I was angry, I was upset, I didn't know what to do, I didn't know what to say. And then God, you're giving me a congregation to be in charge of. That Sunday now I have to get up and say something. I want to be sitting with them crying. But I believe that God has gifted us to be able to bring healing and reconciliation. If anything we need is reconciliation in the body of Christ. Thank you.
It's good to lament, it's good to grieve together as one. So y'all already, we're in section 3 now, which is progress. So at what point do you think it's inappropriate for someone to ask for your Black perspective? When is it inappropriate to ask for your Black perspective on something? When someone comes to you to be educated and ask you things that pertain to you as a Black man, at what point is that inappropriate, or is it inappropriate?
I don't think it's inappropriate if they're being genuine, right? But, you know, it's inappropriate, you know, if you're, I guess, not being genuine. I mean, I don't think there's any other way to put it, you know? I mean, if you don't really want to know, then don't ask. You know, if you don't really want to be part of the solution, then don't ask. You know, I mean, that's how I feel about it. You know, if you don't want to help us, then don't ask.
I don't know if this answered the question. This is all I had. It was this. I know a lot of times, if you feel a certain way about a particular issue or you want more knowledge, you'll ask like a Black person who you know thinks similar to you, and you'll kind of like disregard other people's opinion. Like we all have the same type of ideas or thoughts. So, like you were saying, I think just being open to different opinions. So just because one person, one Black man thinks it's a particular issue, that's not the totality of what all Black people think about something. You know, we all think differently.
Sometimes there's this a perception, just like you said, that everybody thinks all Black people think the same way. And it's not true, just like you don't think the same way. But if you don't allow a person to share their heart, you're not going to get a chance to, speak into their lives. You know what I'm saying? Kind of the example that I just shared. When I shared my heart, I know it wasn't easy because I don't talk a lot about stuff like that. It is hard. But when I did that, what the response that I got, you know what I'm saying? So that, to me, that meant that people wanted to hear. Do you understand what I'm saying? It was a hard thing to do. I was vulnerable. A lot of people, can say, because I know sometimes I just laugh at what people put on Facebook. That's inappropriate. This is one of the first times that I, did something like that. But I wanted people to hear my story. I don't want you to think that I'm okay with that. you know, I'm a professional and I do what I want to do. And oftentimes you can say, oh, he's cool with it. Oh, they're cool with it. They understand. No, I need you in that time to understand that. But the fact that you told me whether that's appropriate or not, that was one time that I felt good that people came back and said, Anthony, I want to talk with you about that because I didn't see it that way. And a lot of people were hurt. I said, no, I want to meet with you. No, let's talk kingdom here. I want you to hear my heart. Because oftentimes that doesn't get said. We're trying to be too PC sometimes. You know, PC sometimes. And I want to go right to the matter, right to the heart with stuff. So yeah, I like, you know, no question is inappropriate for me, to be honest with you. No, I want you to ask questions so we can talk. I don't care what it is, but I want to talk because I need you to hear me, because you're not going to change until you hear me. Oftentimes, black folks don't even want to talk about this stuff because it's so hard. It is so hard. But I'm like, no. You want to talk? You want to understand? Let's talk. It may take some time. It's going to take longer than an hour. But I want you to hear me, and I want to talk with you. So nothing's inappropriate for me.
Okay. Thank you for sharing, Anthony. Okay, we're gonna move to question number 3. When asked, what resources do you point people towards? What resources have been helpful for you? And I think it's in the realm of sometimes people want to understand, I guess, their situation better. And so they're looking for things to educate themselves or to understand Black culture sometimes better, or maybe Black experiences better.
Tell them, you know, your experience, you know, what you lived through, and I mean, what better way to, you know, what better resource is there than for me to tell you what I've been through, you know, and I mean, there's no book about it, you know what I mean? You can't go to the library and check it out. You're not gonna go to Barnes and Nobles and get a book. You know, you just listen to their experience, you know, what they've been through, you know, what they continue to go through. And, you know, I don't think anybody up here on this panel is directing anything toward anyone in this room, right? I mean, I think that we've gathered that, you know, the people in this room, you know, want to be a part of change. Because if you didn't want to be a part of change, you wouldn't have come here. And it's like he said earlier, what are we going to do with it now? Notice I didn't say, what are y'all going to do? What are we going to do with it? Right? Because it's just as much our responsibility as it is y'all. So how do we fix this problem? How do we make a change? What can we do to help y'all help us?
I will say it is good to study the history of America, because even in the studying of the history of the church on how they dealt with the issues, how they dealt with slavery, you can hear some of the same terms being used. You can hear people ignoring it, pushing it to the side, and you still see that today. So if you inform yourself on that, you can say, you know what, that doesn't look right. And a lot of people stood in the gap. Were not like to end slavery. There's a lot of Caucasians who put their lives on the line. And sometimes God is gonna anoint you to speak to people that we never can speak to. Because you're in that circle. And we say, you just going through that. You're all right. But when you say it, it may touch them a certain kind of way. So yeah, I believe if you recognize who you're called to talk to, and inform yourself and educate yourself. Google is easy. Just Google it. And I know there's a lot of resources that, a lot of books that's out today that you can read. I love Color Compromise, and a lot of people reading that. Cast is a good book. celebration. All those stories, when you read those stories, you say, man, it's informing me. I think New Jersey is the first state that is making it where every public school has to have Black history. That's important. Cause now we understand what was Abraham really thinking about. Because a lot of the heroes, they really weren't heroes. There's a lot of people who were heroes that we never read about. A lot of people died for that. A lot of people, kids died for that. So I think if we educate ourselves, then we can understand better. Man, these phrases that are being used, they're being echoed today. So if we do that, if we educate ourselves, then we can help the circles that God has placed us in. Because God's going to place us all in different circles. And the circle that you're placed in, you can impact them. But you have to educate yourself first.
I like that. That's why we have a book club, by the way. If anyone's interested. So we're gonna end this section. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think Antonio just now said, he mentioned a little bit about a book, and it's one of the books that you all have been reading for a while. I think I want to, I see an individual with the book, can you lift that up? That's Color of Compromise. Very, very good book. Hold that up. It's one of the things I've been reading for a while. I really liked it because I thought it was balanced. I thought it was, it provided a lot of information on the history. Some of the history I didn't understand it and didn't know, I'll be honest with you myself, but it put it in a very good perspective for individuals to understand the history. All the time, and if you want to understand me, you got to understand my history. And if we're talking about the racial relationships over the years and what's brought us to where we are right now, including slavery and going all the way back, and where the church is right now, I think that's a good book that I would definitely recommend.
And I would also say,
in reference to educate yourself, you don't have to, and there's great books out there, but I think we are the greatest resource. Because, and I just think of our, I would just say African American. When was the last time that you had someone of different color over to your house to eat? Or when was the last time that you actually been to someone of a different color's house to eat? When the last time you watched a Black movie other than Tyler Perry? I'm just saying because there's a lot of movies that are out there and a lot of entertainment that's out there that speak to our culture other than what I would say what the stereotype is and things of that nature. And I'm a history person, so I love anything civil rights or even the civil rights era, the war. It brings tears to my eyes because I just love it, and so I educate myself. And so just as we're as Black men, we're educating ourselves because we have white friends. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like in order for you to move the pendulum forward or to move progress forward, educate yourself. Befriend someone that doesn't look like you or maybe doesn't even think like you. Because it at the end of the day, it just broadens your mind to where, yeah, you may not do what they do or do things or say things the way that they say them, but I promise you it opens up your mind to where, you know what, this person is not bad after all. And you get to learn things. So I would just say there's a lot of entertainment out there, like I said earlier about Kirk Franklin and his songs. There's a lot of other artists out there that we hold dear in our culture. That you guys may have never heard of something like that. And so, but I would just say educate yourself, find you someone, like I said, at your job or something, befriend someone, your neighbor, that doesn't look like you and just say, hey, I just want to have a conversation with you, and things of that nature. So I think no conversation is off limits. If you're really trying to grow and learn, I think you have to ask those hard questions.
All right, so this is gonna be the last question. Yes, the last question. Yeah, I'm all deflated and salty. I'm gonna have to go talk to the mirror when I get home. Talk to Awen, So, what have you seen within our community that has given you reason for hope?
This.
Al Pippen, Pastor Al Pippen. He said it first.
I started off this story with, started off this talk with maybe some people consider negative, but I'm always speaking to my heart. What gives me hope is this. After the George Floyd incident, the police departments of both cities, Bryan and College Station, got together and they invited African Americans in the communities, probably about 20 or 30 of us. That's what I said. And they sat down with us, and they started out to say, listen, we're not Michigan, we're not, Minneapolis. And we can't control what happened there, but we can control what happens here in Bryan College Station. And we want to have a discussion with you all, because we want to understand, how can we do better? How can we bridge the gap? And that was, I tell you what, that was the most impressive thing that I ever seen. We met probably about a month and a half or something like that on Thursdays, and we talked just like we're talking right here. And they wanted to know how they can be more effective as police officers. Just think about that. That meant a lot to me. And we talked about ways that we can bridge the gap between officers and our youth, officers and African Americans. And they wanted to know, it wasn't just the police chief of Bryan. It was the police chief of College Station, but Bryan and their entire leadership staff. That was amazing to me. And they were vulnerable. And we talked about how we can de-escalate. We talked about why you're using guns. What can a black African American do to put themselves in harm's way? What laws do we have? What role and rights do we have? I mean, those are the conversations that you never really get a chance to talk to, particularly with police officers. But we had the opportunity to share our hearts, and they told us the truth. And sometimes that's all you want to hear, And when we found out when incidents happen, they do have rules and they do have regulations. And in doing that, I had to step back and say, you know what? They do have a hard job. They have a hard job, and it's not easy being a police officer. I'll tell you, that's not for me. That's not for me. That's a very difficult thing to do, and I thank God for it. Because like my brother said, if I call 911, I want them to show up. Okay, I'm not defunding nothing. I want y'all to come and come on time. So, I don't even want to go there. Okay, but I think that to me is what happened. That's what's happening in conversation. I just want to let you all know that we have police officers and police departments that really care. And they're going out of their way to make sure they connect with this community. All right.
I would say what gives me hope is I posted a similar post on Facebook around the time of George Floyd and a couple other brothers passing. And I got a really encouraging response from a lot of white friends that I had, and I was able to sit down and talk to them about my experiences, very similar to what you were saying. So that gave a lot of hope, and I know for me, I'm very private about experiences, and it helps me not to be to hold grudges or to be hateful. So a lot of times for me, it's better not to share experiences. But it gave me hope that when my white friends asked to sit down and eat and those types of things, and they were like, "Wow, I didn't know," and it came as a shock to me that there's a lot of white people that don't know, that they just don't know. They're really ignorant to what's happening. So that gives me hope that I have people in my life that I know that once thought one way or was very ignorant to the fact. Now they do know, and it just takes one to change.
I think this is like tonight we're meeting together, and although this season of what has happened has been tough, but God has used that to it allow us to establish relationships with people we never would have probably crossed arms with, right? If we was comfortable in our world, we probably would never cross arms. So I think that's hopeful that God has used this, and now there's people who are trying to bridge the gap and come together and walk in unity despite everything that's going on. So I think even tonight, it's fruit of what is happening. So yes, that we continue to I think Paul says in 2 Corinthians, you have compassion with others, you know what I mean? Because you receive compassion. Now because we receive compassion, we can have compassion on other people. So when the deal happened in Atlanta, now we gotta say, no, this ain't about us. Time for us to go heal other people. But if we never receive compassion, we might be more bitter, you know. But because of that, because God has used other people of other cultures to help heal us, then now we can go help heal others. So I think it creates a great cycle of you love your brother, because look how your brother loved you. You know what I mean? So if we have a church, that we can open our doors, because we can say, no, they Living Hope, open their church doors. Open your church doors. So I think it's creating a cycle where God is like, people, I'm sending you people that have compassion, and you gonna have compassion on other people as well.
Something that I shared with some of the guys on yesterday. And it had to be maybe a year or two ago. There was a couple walking down the street, and I was at my job, and so we had just closed our lobby, and we were just kind of in there finishing up things. And they were African American. The guy had to be maybe 6'4", probably almost 300 pounds, and his girlfriend or whoever she was at the time was a little petite lady. Well, by the time they got in front of our building, you could hear them arguing, and he was kind of jerking her a little bit. And so we were just kind of like, you know, do we call 911? Do we, you know, what we do? But we didn't know that someone had saw them from walking down the street, had already called 911. And so 2 police officers showed up. They was probably about my height, and they didn't come with guns blazing or with anything. They came, pulled in, talked with both of them, and then they got them away to where they had him sitting on the curb, and then was talking with her. We could hear different interactions going on, and he asked the young lady, you know, does she feel threatened? And she said no. He asked her, you know, did he hit her or something? And she must have said yes, because then they kind of told the guy to stand up, and he kind of started walking off. And this was a big guy. I would have been, you know, as a cop showing up, I would have probably been afraid of him as well. And so here you have these 2 cops that are my size trying to, have a discussion with this big guy. And so then another car load of cops came in. I think it was just maybe 2 of them. But what I was impressed about is that they didn't come with the intent, we're gonna harm you because we've already gotten a call that you know, maybe domestic abuse or something like that. But they came asking questions. And even though they ended up arresting the guy because he had a warrant, but it was a incident that went through without any type of negativity or anything of that nature. And so that's what makes me hopeful, is that there are law enforcement out there that show up even though they don't know. Again, I don't know if I would have showed up